Are we ready? Where's the rest of the group? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 21st of October in the year 2019. It is a meeting of the Staton City Council. And at this time, I'm going to ask Councilor Hook if she'll lead us in a flag salute. So, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I hope most of you are used to me kind of sitting down for some of these things anymore. It's been a summer of limited mobility, let's put it that way, and it's just a lot easier. Okay, are there any additions to the agenda? Any declarations of ex-party contact or conflicts of interest?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I am going to not participate in the vote for the minutes section of the agenda because I was not here last time.
Okay, all right, thank you. Alyssa, would you do the City of Staton Employees' Years of Recognition Service?
Yes.
And she's going to call those of you that are here up to the podium and get your certificate. Are we giving big bonus checks with these?
Let's hope so. These really nice certificates.
Nice certificates.
Before we talk about they're frameable.
We'll do the bonus
That's
checks.
right.
We'll do the bonus checks later. Okay. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, we've got several employees to honor for their years of service with the city. I'm going to start with one who is actually not going to be here tonight because he's retired and enjoying the retired life. But because we had to delay this a little bit over the summer, he did submit some information, and I wanted to share it with you guys.
Okay.
So the first up is Mark Flandy. He spent 30 years with the city. He served in the Public Works Department as a maintenance worker 1 and 2, and retired as a utility operator. So while with the city, he was on the Safety Committee and a member of the OAWU and the AWWA. Mark held several certifications, including Water Treatment Operator Level 2, Distribution Operator Level 2, Collections Operator Level 1, a Locator Certification, Pesticide Applicator's License, First Aid and CPR Flagger Certification. And Mark graduated from Scio High School, and he currently resides in Scio. His family includes spouse Stephanie, his son Jared, stepdaughters Cassidy and Katie, 3 grandchildren, his dog Petey, and cat John Paul. In retirement, Mark plans on doing a lot of hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, travel, and working on his property. So we thank Mark for his 30 years of service with the city. Our next employee is here, Tom Etzel. Tom? So Tom has also been with the city for 30 years, and he's served in the Public Works Department as a utility worker 2, weekend operator and supervisor for Public Works. He's been a member of the Safety Committee and the Wage Study Committee in the 1990s. Additionally, Tom has been able to serve the community over the years as a member of the Budget Committee for the North St. Anne School District, board member for Regis High School, Budget Committee for the Stayton and Sublimity Fire Districts, as well as a board member for the Sublimity Fire Department. Tom has worked for the City of Sublimity for about 5 years prior to accepting the position with the City of Staton in September of 1989. In 2018, Tom was presented with the Water Operator of the Year by the Oregon Association of Water Utilities. Tom holds the following certifications: Water Treatment 2, Water Distribution 2, Wastewater Collections, a pesticide applicator's license, commercial driver's license, and first aid and CPR and a flagger certification. Tom graduated from Regis High School, and he also took some college courses and several hours of workshops and classes for continuing education. Tom is married to Sharon, his wife of 38 years, who's right back here. He has 2 children, both married, and 5 wonderful grandkids. One family has a boy and a girl. The other family has a boy and twins, a boy and a girl. 2 of the grandkids are just 8 months apart, and the other 3 are just a month apart. So they always have fun together. Anyone with grandchildren will know, according to Tom, depending on the activity, that grandkids are a joy to be with and spoil. But when the day is over, the kids go back home with mom and dad, so the grandparents can rest up and do it all over again the next day or the next weekend. Tom has a hobby, which I think if you've worked with Tom, you are aware of this. His wife calls it an obsession. In his words, I have a favorite tractor color, green and yellow. That would be John Deere. So I thought this was an interesting story, and I wanted to make sure I included it. Because I learned something, Tom. So Tom grew up on a farm, and they had several pieces of John Deere equipment, even some John Deere toys. In the early 90s, Tom went to a toy show and saw that some of the toys he'd grown up with were on display, and new ones were being made. He was able to find the John Deere tractor toy he'd had as a child, and from there he started collecting John Deere toys. He's expanded his hobby to include old John Deere farming books, manuals, and some equipment parts from older equipment that have the John Deere logo. Him and his wife both grew up in this area, and it was important to them that they stay here to be close to their parents and raise a family. Now even his children with their families have stayed close to the area, which allows them plenty of time with their grandkids. Recently, Tom and his wife were able to build a home on his family's Century farm just outside of town, which keeps him busy on the weekends. He shared that currently, the animals on the farm include deer, mice, several wild turkeys, and a couple pesky moles and gophers. Thank you. She got here just in time. Next up is Danielle Wetzel, Sergeant Danielle Wetzel. That's okay. So tonight we're honoring Danielle for her 20 years of service with the city. She's served at the Staton Police Department as a reserve police officer, detective, and in her current position of a police sergeant. She's a member of the OPOA, OEDI, CART, and the HART. Prior to working with the Staton Police Department, she also worked for Cannon Beach Police Department from 1997 to 1999. Danielle has a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from Western Oregon University. Thanks, Danielle. Next up, we've got Michael Bradley, and he's also here with 20 years of service with the city. Michael has served in the positions of park maintenance worker, utility operator, and his current position of chief water treatment plant operator. During his employment with the city, Michael has served on the safety committee. Michael holds the following certifications: a water treatment 2 and water distribution 2. He's a graduate of Oregon State University with a Bachelor of Science degree. His family includes his wife, Julia, kids Michaela, Marissa, and Carson, and stepkids Olivia and Sophia. Michael's hobbies include gardening and watching his kids participate in sports and other activities. All right, up next is Rachel Halligan, who couldn't be with us tonight. She's also has been with the city for 20 years. Rachel has held the position of police records and evidence clerk with work and crime prevention as well. Rachel has been a member of the city's safety committee. She attended Chemeketa Community College and has completed all the prerequisites for the nursing program. She has 6 grandbabies: Alex, Riley, Owen, Miles, Alyssa, and sweet Emmy Ray. Her hobbies include NASCAR and the Green Bay Packers. Congratulations to Rachel. Next up, we've got Bob Parsons, who's on his way up. Bob. So Bob has been with the city for 15 years, and he is the city's senior parks maintenance worker. He has been a member of the safety committee, and prior to working for the city, Bob worked as a park ranger for the state of Oregon. Bob has the following certifications: a certified playground technician and a pesticide applicator's license. His family includes his wife of 35 years, Kathy, and their dog. There she is. She's back there hiding. and their dog Gage. Bob's hobbies include woodworking and building cabinets, and since we're on the subject, I just want to point out that Bob did some really awesome work at the pool recently. He redid their front countertop, so if you haven't been in to see it, it's pretty amazing, so stop by. And next up, he'll be doing City Hall's counter, which I'm really excited about. Bob mentions his favorite teacher in high school was Mayor Porter. He says it's hard to believe he's been around here for as long as he has, but Staton is really not that bad of a place to say you're from. He says it's a great location near many attractions like Central Oregon, the coast, and many outdoor activities. He's glad to have served the years he has and hopes to make it another 4 years until his retirement. Okay, so next up is Michelle Ash. Doesn't look like she was able to be with us tonight. She's been with the city for 5 years, and her roles have included municipal court clerk, police records, and office specialist. She's served on the safety committee, and prior to working for the city, she worked for, I don't know if I'll say this right, Lanier County Superior Court in Georgia. Michelle holds an associate's degree in accounting and management. Thanks to Michelle for her 5 years. And our final recognition is Emily Warren. She wasn't able to be here tonight. She's been with the city for 5 years working at our library. Her roles have included a library page, library aide, and she recently was promoted to the early literacy outreach coordinator position. Emily is a Regis High School graduate and completed her associate's degree from Chemeketa Community College during this time as well. She's currently a senior at Oregon State University studying human development and family science. She considers serving the children in our Staton community and understanding their needs to be the highlight of her job. This position has given her the ability to apply what she has learned through her schooling to the real world through direct field experience. So, thanks, Emily. And that's it. I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Alyssa. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank all of you folks for lots of loyal service and making our city a better place to live. Okay? How's that water plant, Mike? It's, okay, all right, all right. That's going to be the topic of a short
Couldn't have had
conversation later this evening.
Your
but-
Honor, we couldn't have had a better hire than Michael Bradley down at the
Oh,
water plant.
absolutely, yeah. He was even good on the street sweeper. He may still be. Are you still running the new one? Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Unfortunately, we don't have an appointment this evening. We have under public comments, Steve Poisson, RDS. Steve?
I'm Steve Poisson. I live at 1750 East Pine Street in Staton. I'm the president of Revitalize Downtown Staton. And I just want to update you briefly on the Facade Revitalization Grant that is underway that we received in May. You may know that the theater was closed in the last week because they've done major remodeling to their concession stand. They also painted the front and are redoing all of the display cabinets and their marquee. Then we have Jerry Aboud's building at 3rd and Ida. It's been painted a beautiful color compared to what it used to be. And he is waiting for windows and doors to be replaced, and then awnings will be put above those. Across the street, there is what will be called the Staton Bank building, which is currently where Public Works and the Planning Department are held. And they are having custom wood windows made by Staton Wood Windows to replace all of the second-story windows that were poorly done in another lifetime. And the first floor has been painted, but they will then paint the rest of the upstairs once the new windows are in. Then we move to Branding Stitch and the Marketplace at the Grove. They've primarily been doing their work in the back so far. They've painted the alleyway, which we appreciate greatly. It was not part of what they agreed to do, but they're taking care of the back also. They will be doing extensive painting in the spring. Their awnings have been removed, and it's the little foyer between the two is going to become the little RDS information space, thanks to an offer from the Mesas. So we're looking forward to that. Then we have where Family Building Blocks was. It's going to be a dance studio. That will be painted in the spring. We're kind of losing the painting weather for outdoors, so most of the painting will be done in the spring. In the spring, also, electrical service will be replaced to the FBB building and to the Grove. They will be dug underground because they're connected to one another, so they all are one big project. And then last but not least is the Beaucamp building on the corner of 3rd and High. The massive cornice that is going to be placed at the top of the facade has been ordered. It's a big deal to make and install, but it's on its way. Then there's some antique grates to be put in, a sink here and there, a little bit of accent painting, and that building will finally be done. And congratulations to Julie. She has been accepted to be on the National Register of Historic Places for that building. Okay. So that's where we are right now. Probably going to be a little slower. The Grove is going to get new flooring, for instance, which may be able to happen in the winter, but a lot of it will have to wait till spring, but they're moving along. They actually have 3 years under the grant to finish, so they're doing well.
All right.
And that's it.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
you.
Nice job, really. Okay, let's see. That was the only green slip I had. Were there any other comments from the public tonight at this point? Well, let's move along then. Consent agenda has the October 7th City Council minutes and the renewal of Chemeketa Community Regional Library Service Contract. So what would you folks like to do with that, I hope?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
A motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. Would all in favor say aye, please?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. We'll consider that part of our business done. Blessings upon us, there are no public hearings tonight under general business. A wastewater master plan update and inflow and infiltration study and mitigation plan contract award. Mr. Ledwick.
That's a mouthful, I know, I realize that.
It is.
Tonight, Your Honor, with your blessing, I would like to, I prepared a slideshow for this to enlighten some of the council members and maybe some of the audience to what this is and why we're here where we're at. So with your blessing, I'll move forward with that.
Go ahead on it.
The issue before the council tonight is, should the city council award a contract for the wastewater master plan update, inflow and infiltration study, and mitigation plan to Keller Associates? The wastewater master plan update and I&I study and mitigation plan will include a detailed analysis of the current conditions, the future needs, recommendations to meet those needs, cost estimates for the recommended improvements. The focus will be on the wastewater treatment plant itself, the lift stations, the collection systems, and the service laterals. A little bit of background. The city has experienced growth over the past several decades, but growth substantially slowed in the past 12 years. The current wastewater master plan was completed in 05, adopted in 06, and was produced during a time of more substantial growth, and they assumed that that growth rate would continue. The growth was projected to be a constant rate of 3.35% over 20 years. As we've learned in the last, year or so, with Portland State's projections, we're a little less than 1%, I believe. And so we need to look at this master plan, we're using those growth rates. The population of the state and Sublimity was projected to be about 19,400 in the year 2025. We're currently sitting at 10,800. So unless we have, double the size in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll never meet that projection. The master plan projected in 2025, we experienced 2.7 million gallons of dry weather flow and 5 million gallons of wet weather flow. Currently, we exceed those by 56%. We exceed those flows with 56% of the projected population of 19,000. Basically, we have half the population and we're already exceeding those flows. Wastewater treatment plant existing flows was designed, the wastewater treatment plant was designed for 2.7 million gallons per day. In 2016, we experienced flows in the wintertime of over 6.7 million gallons per day, double the capacity of the plant, the design capacity of that plant. In 2018, we did not meet our NPDES DEQ permit for 3-4 months in a row. So the city went out and hired a consultant to look at our plant and prepare a model of our plant. In reviewing the data from 2016 and 2018, we found the following. Average annual daily flow was 85 to 100% of the design flow of the plant. The wet weather average daily flow was between 103 and 127% of the design flow for the plant. The wet weather maximum daily flow was between 107 and 137 or 132% of the design flow. And the average daily total suspended solids was between 110 and 134% of the design value. Basically, the plant's getting close to being maximized during wet weather, high flows. So you have to ask yourself, where are those flows coming from? And the most likely culprit is inflow and infiltration, I&I, but cross connections are a possibility also. What part of town is the I&I coming from? Well, we really just don't know. But we need to find out if it's from the city main lines or private property service laterals. My guess is probably a lot of the private property service laterals, but we need to find that out. How does the I&I affect the taxpayer? Well, taxpayers are paying for the treatment plant and all the maintenance that goes on down at the plant. And right now they're cleaning a lot of groundwater, which is very clean and doesn't need to be cleaned. So we're paying money to clean groundwater. Additional flows create the need for the wastewater treatment plant improvements or expansion, which could raise rates.
Lance, when would you like to take questions on any of this?
After I'm done, if possible,
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Mayor.
fine. That's fine, thank you.
I can always come back to a slide if you need. How does the updating the wastewater master plan and performing an I&I study help the city? Well, the population growth rates will be updated per Portland State's data of 1% or so. The flow and loading will be determined and forecasted for the next 20 years into the future. The I&I study should determine where the groundwater is coming from and prioritize projects to reduce the I&I in our system. Dollar values can be placed on repairs and the capital projects. Alternative analysis can be performed to determine where to best invest taxpayer dollars so we can get that most bang for the buck that I talk about. We got to ask, is it the collection system I&I reduction, or do we want to increase the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant, or both? So we have so many dollars, do we want to invest in making our treatment plant larger because we have all this inflow, or do we want to invest in fixing the collection system out in the city so we reduce our inflow? Those are questions that we need to answer, and that's what this master plan and I&I study will help us do. Wastewater project funding sources. Outside of bonds and traditional bank loans, publicly owned wastewater utilities in Oregon have 4 primary sources of public funds available to them. So if we want to do a project down there and we can't afford it as a city, that we can go to these sources and perhaps get low interest rate loans or grants to prepare and perform these projects. And they're the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, Business Oregon, the USDA Agriculture, and Rural Community Assistance Corporation. My glasses. Boom. Funding source requirements of these agencies. DEQ and Business Oregon and USDA RD will fund master plan projects for 5 years from the date of their approval. For us, that was 2007. After 5 years, updated population and flow and loading data are required. If those updates are significantly different than the complete plan update, let me start over there. If those updates are significantly different then a complete plan, new master plan will have to be prepared. It's required. DEQ and Business Oregon accept an update for up to 10 years from the initial plan approval, which again is 2007. After 10 years, a new plan is usually required to get funding. So we're beyond that 10 years. So we really couldn't go to one of those two places and try to get funding because our master plan is old and expired. A community may change a selective alternative within the update within the first 10 years after approval of the initial plan. So if we wanted to go and our initial plan was 2010, and we wanted to go and say, hey, instead of doing a new SBR, we want to do an MBR. Just go with me on this. We could do a plan to change that selected plan, and DEQ or one of these funding agencies would allow that. But since we're beyond that 10 years, they will not allow it. And after that, a new plan is usually required. This is where we're at today. So I know the shock that you must have felt when you received the cost of the master plan. It's very understandable. What I would like to show you are some projects that have happened throughout the valley and that of like-sized. I'm not sure if you can see that. I wish I could zoom in a little better, but of like-sized cities and the 2019 dollars for those. Very similar, if not more, than what this project's going to cost us. I think the city of Dallas paid, what, $260,000. We've got the Dallas that was over, I can't read it really.
249.
I apologize, I thought that was larger. And we got Gresham at $110,000. We've got Salmon Creek, $608,000. Woodburn in 2005, they have a population of 24,000. They were at $700,000. These are for like plans that we're looking at doing now. And so this is an example of what these projects cost. It is what it is. I have no control over those costs. And that'll give you that. So in summary, the wastewater master plan prepared in 2006, it's 13 years old. The city has experienced high flows to the wastewater treatment plant. I&I is a major issue and source of high flows. Data from this master plan will help the city determine course of action to reduce I&I and determine necessary improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. A revised capital improvement plan will be generated with updated costs. The updated master plan will serve as a planning document for any funding request to DEQ, Business Oregon, USDA, or Rural Community Assistance Corporation. Preparing the master plan will also meet one of the City Council's goals. This was on our City Council goals from 2015 up to this last February when we met at the library. I will take any questions. Our consultant or proposed consultant is here, Peter Olson from Keller Associates, which he can ask or answer any questions you may have. He's probably more of the technical guy to ask questions to. I would do my best. And once we're done with questions, I'll move on to the actual written staff report.
Okay.
Mr. Bear, you're on.
Thank you. Lance, when did we update that sewer plant? In 10 or 11?
2006.
6.
Yeah.
$11 million.
Oh,
The plant upgrades were 10 or 11.
oh, yeah, they were like 2012, I believe they were at.
12.
Yeah.
Not quite 8 years ago.
No. And those were part of the master plan. It was,
Yeah.
I mean, those projects were part of the master plan that was prepared in 2005-06.
Okay, $11 million this community spent on that.
Yep.
And that was supposed to take us through whenever.
2025.
Okay. Not much community growth, but all kinds of excessive wastewater to that treatment plant. What explains that other than I&I?
I&I. That is your
But
explanation.
we've got an active program to work with that. I see that truck out there digging manhole or pulling manholes and down the snake goes and
That doesn't take care of I&I at all, Your Honor.
It just identifies where it's coming from.
It doesn't even necessarily do that. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. If you're talking about actually putting television cameras in a line and going down there during rainy periods, you can see the water coming in from pipes.
Right.
That will allow you to see where we have I&I. But we've got 34 miles of sewer lines in this city, and we don't have any idea, and that's only main line. We have a problem, and it's my belief, and we'll find that out when we do this plan, if we do this plan, that I think our private service laterals are probably the majority of the problem. That is not unheard of in any city.
Okay.
And that will allow us, in doing this and giving us an opportunity to go out and get grants and things like that, we may want to, and I've wanted to, I've thought about this, go out and create a plan for homeowners in this community to take low interest rate loans out to fix their service laterals.
Okay.
The city wouldn't be on the hook. I don't know, we'd have to structure it the way it is, but that's a possibility. That's something that we should be looking towards. That is the only way you're going to reduce I&I with the service lateral.
Okay. One more real quick. Our sister city to the north shares that sewer system. Are their flows significantly larger than they've been? I mean, are they?
What I can say is our sister city to the north has I&I issues just as we have.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Somebody else? Questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So will this also, this plan will also be checking sublimities, sewer lines and whatnot?
No, they're not part of it.
Okay.
We have a flow meter right now. What I will say, here's what I'll say. We are not, the city, the taxpayers of Staton are not going to be paying for work to be done in Sublimity. Wouldn't be right. What we will do is be checking flows coming from Sublimity. We have a manual with the flow meter there now that we track flows on a monthly basis, and we charge them for those flows.
Okay.
But we can't go in there, and I wouldn't even suggest it, to have state taxpayers pay for Sublimity work. One other thing I'd like to add to that. They are our partners. They do pay a percentage to Milk Creek funding and the wastewater treatment plant funding. They will be very much included in this process because they will be on the hook, so to say, for any kind of improvements to the plant that are directly related to their flows, as well as Milk Creek Pump Station, which is also comes from, it treats their flows or pumps their flows directly to the treatment plant. So they will be directly involved. Working with us, I believe they'll probably sit on a technical review committee and meet with the consultant as they go through this process.
Mr. Mayor?
Somebody else?
Yes, I just have one more question.
There are more.
Yes. I already asked you this, but just so everyone else can hear. So we have already set aside $175K to pay for the master plan. Where's the rest of the money going to come from?
That $175K, when I projected that, I really didn't know what the total expanse of the project would be. After receiving these bids, first of all, this is unlike a contract for, like, saying Regis Street, okay? Mm-hmm. This is hiring a consultant to do work over and above $250,000. So this is a qualifications-based request, okay? I don't look at the dollar amount it's going to cost or their bids until we look and evaluate the qualifications of the consultants. So as I'll get into this later, we reviewed these proposals from these consultants solely independently, and once we determined who we wanted to move forward with, that is when I opened them up sooner, but so I would know, but no one else on the review committee knew what their bids were. It was based solely on qualifications. We had 6 individuals looking at these with backgrounds and looking at master plans and proposals. We all scored them based off the scoring qualifications announced in the proposal. Keller Associates was the highest scoring. We discussed it. We decided to move forward with negotiations with Keller Associates. I met with Keller. I met with DEQ to determine what their proposal, if it was going to meet that actual plan that is prepared and will meet the Business Oregon DEQ funding source, and they said it would. So that is why I'm bringing this forward to you guys tonight. Sorry, I didn't answer your question. The second half, sorry. A little long-winded tonight, sorry folks. The second half, the additional 175 would have to be budgeted in the next fiscal year. I somewhat kind of saw that coming. I only put 175 down. I started this process a little later than usual, so we could go through the process through the end of June, and in April and May, when we go through our budget committee hearings again, I can propose the 175, and it'll be upon the budget committee and the city council to approve that or not. And that's where we're at with that.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
since we're rocking and rolling with questions for Lance already, I will ask you this. Is your staff or whoever prepared to begin drafting these funding requests that we'll begin to be eligible for after we have this wastewater plan in place?
I think it'd be premature right now to say that we'd be ready to go because, again, we got to remember this, Counselor. We were projected as a constant rate of 3.35% of growth for 20 years. I'm very interested in finding out what our capital improvement plan is going to look like, to be quite honest. I realize we have flow issues. That's apparent. How do we treat those? How do we treat that flow? Are we looking at perhaps doing wastewater treatment plant modifications, which can be quite expensive, or are we looking at more of an annual maintenance plan to reduce I&I in our collection system?
So essentially what I'm hearing is the capital improvement plan is very necessary to decide on whether or not this is going to go forward and if it's a good, wise choice for the community to spend $350,000 towards this. So I guess what I'm getting at is...
Capital improvement plan will be a part of that master plan.
Right.
It may be much different than the capital improvement plan we have currently because of the growth rate projections that were used in 2006 and 2007. We may not have to upsize the line to 30 inches. We may only have to upsize it to 24 inch or something like that. I don't know until that happens.
Okay.
We may be able to live with the treatment plant the way it is with some minor modifications, which may not justify going and looking for a loan from one of these agencies. I just can't answer the question whether or not we're going to be able to. We'll be ready to do that. I know if the project is going to be a very high dollar project, we will be certainly going for one of those grants. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Or loans.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
My agenda this evening, and I'll come back in just a second. My agenda this evening says public comment. And so there's going to be room for questions from the audience directed at Lance about this project and the things he's projected and shown us. I'm the last one to think that I'm going to be the only one that has all the good or smart questions on a topic. So when you feel like it, or if someone's got a question, raise your hand, let me recognize you, and go up to the mic there, please. Councilor Hook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lance, forgive me for probably a little bit of an ignorant question. You are the subject matter expert here. Does any of this help us find out information that we need to know to start working on some of our worst streets, on like the infrastructure that's underneath them? I know a lot of them we've talked about, it's not the actual street itself, it's what needs to go underneath that costs a lot of money. Does this help us at all get more information to get to that point where we can make those improvements?
Yeah, I mean, a portion of it will. Obviously, I was talking to, saying that we'll be able to look at the proper size pipes. I'd sure hate to go out and do a street right now, and right now our master plan says, oh, you got to put this 24-inch pipe in. So I pay a contractor to go put a 24-inch pipe in, and then we actually do our new collection systems review and new data, and it only really needs to be, a 12-inch pipe, and we already have one in there. I'd hate to, go spend for a 24-inch pipe and we don't need one. These are the questions that will get answered, and so yeah, it will help for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Jump in here.
Thanks. So I will also apologize for my ignorance, but I'm kind of confused on how the estimate was derived, and also if you could talk to, with regards to the proposals, I see that cost wasn't one of the variables that was weighed in the scoring process, which I thought was really interesting. So it's a two-part question. Where does the estimate come from if they're not coming from the vendors, or maybe did they come from the vendors? And why wasn't price part of the weighted score?
I will, Council, I'll answer question number 2 first.
Okay.
It's against state law to do it.
Sorry, what was that?
It's against state law to allow any kind of consulting request for proposals to be based on price. It's supposed to be based on qualifications. In fact, when I first put this bid out, I had that in there, was price as part of and I got called straight away from the state and said, are you expecting engineers to be working on this? And is your estimate over $100,000? And I said yes and yes. And she said, well, this is the president of and I talked to our attorney about this, so he was well aware of this. And she said that this needs to be a qualifications-based
Interesting.
Contract or proposals, and not based on price. And once you read those qualifications and you guys score them, then and only then you're supposed to go into, and you can enter into negotiations with the consultant that you want to work with.
Okay, thank you.
That's state law. So number 1, the 175. I said it earlier. I was really a little bit in the dark. I had talked to some consultants, and they assured me that you could go and talk to DEQ and perhaps just do an update of your current master plan, which would significantly reduce the cost. That's where the 175 came in.
Right.
After we got the proposals in, and I met with Mr. Olson, and I was on the phone with DEQ and discussing this with Mr. Olson, if we were to do that, we'd have to go back in 5 years when it gets beyond the 20, we'd have to pay for a whole new master plan.
Okay.
Because it's beyond 10 years. And so because we need a whole new master plan, because we want that funding, that is why the $350,000 came in.
Thank you.
Because if we want to use, in a small town like Staton, we just don't have the money to do any kind of major improvements without getting some sort of funding from the state or one of these agencies. Right now, our treatment plant was funded by USDA. We have a loan with them right now, a low-interest loan for those 2012 improvements. And that's where that came from. That's how we paid for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Anything from the audience? And before we go, just a second. Let me introduce Russ Williamson. He's our city attorney, and came out to our meeting tonight by invitation and had a little session with us before the regular meeting. And need to welcome him and thank you for being here, and apologies for not doing this sooner. In the back there, our parks maintenance person.
Got a question for you out of the office for a change.
You have to give your name and your address.
Well, I'm Robert Parsons, and I live at 1267 Wilshire. And my question is, how long do we have to pay on the present low-interest loan for the last upgrades to the wastewater facility? And then we're going to try to take another loan out for I&I, or expansion of something that was just expanded upon?
Sure.
Bob, I will have to get back to you on the length of time because I don't know what the length of time is. I would ask Susanna, our finance director, but I'm not sure she's been here long enough to ask you on that, okay? So I know we refinanced that 5 years ago. I don't know what the term length is of it. We tried to shorten the term on that, but I don't know what that term is. Number two is, I'm not saying we're going to go out and get a loan. All I'm saying is by updating this master plan, it gives us the ability to do so. Okay, so if we had a catastrophic failure down there right now, we couldn't go out and get a loan because our master plan is out of date. And so what this will allow us to do is if we did have a catastrophic failure down there, we could go to one of these agencies and get a low interest loan to fix it. That is all I'm saying. I'm not saying we're going to go out and do it. I'm just saying it gives us the ability to do it.
I'm just worried about the increase in taxes on my property when that happens.
I completely agree. I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all.
All right.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Mayor.
Give your dad a pat on the back for me when you go by. Andy? Yes, Counselor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lance, he brought up a good point. Is there going to be any increase in taxes, rates, or anything like that from your current proposal that you have if we were to accept this Keller Associates plan?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I mean, I'm in it. There's three reasons I'm doing this. We have an I&I problem, serious I&I problem. We're spending money, taxpayer money, hand over fist to treat groundwater. And number three, it's a city council goal. And if I wasn't to do this, I would be asked, why didn't you do this in one of these February meetings? And I would be like, well, I don't know, I'm sitting on my hands. So I'm doing the job that you guys hired me to do. Those are my three reasons.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Comments? Thoughts? Well,
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question.
all right, here we go.
Lance, just as a devil's advocate, so if we approve this now and we have the 175, but then the budget comes around again and the budget committee doesn't approve the next 175, then is the project just dead in the water at that point?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay.
Counselor, who's on the budget committee?
Well, I feel like that's something to consider, right?
Well, it's a fair question, but, ask around.
I may have a mouse in my pocket.
Yeah. Who's on the budget committee? We are, yeah.
Your Honor, if I may, I would like Peter Olson. Peter, could you come up and just introduce yourself? We'll be working with Peter.
Certainly.
If you guys elect to do this. He's our project manager for Keller Associates. Maybe
Welcome.
If you have any questions that are very technical, he's your man, not me.
Okay.
I'm Peter Olson with Keller Associates, and just excited at the opportunity to work for Staton. I think it's a great project to identify. Agree with everything Lance is saying, and this I&I is a significant issue, and I agree with this assessment of there's a potential. There's the laterals, and there's what we're going to be doing is a significant approach to collecting a lot of data, doing smoke testing, a lot of different ways to kind of root out the problem and assess the situation. So, I love what I do. I get excited about wastewater and dealing with this stuff, and this planning is kind of odd, but whatever. So that's me. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Wait a minute, I'm thinking here. It takes time. Most of the work going to be done in the wet season?
Good portion. The smoke testing needs to be done more in the dry season. Yeah.
When, please?
In the dry season.
In the dry season.
Yeah, you want the. Sorry, Lance, you had
could you just a brief description of what smoke testing is and why it's useful?
Yeah. It's a fun process for us, even though it creates a little havoc. What it is we take a lawnmower engine type device, stick it on the top of a manhole, and then have liquid smoke. It's not harmful to breathe, anything like that, but it blows smoke into the manhole and therefore the collection, the pipe system, and we observe and see where it comes out. It should only be coming out of vents in the roofs. It should only be coming out of other manholes and some cleanouts, that are right at the front of the homes. If it comes out anywhere else, if it comes out of a catch basin, it comes out of other locations, roof leaders, roof drains, we really have the smoking gun. We're finding where those cross connections, those shouldn't be connected with the sanitary sewer system. So it's a quick and easy way to go through the system. We'll be spending an entire week going through doing 50 to 90,000 linear feet of collection system pipe to root out and see where those problem areas are. And we'll narrow down which areas we want to focus on in the city with other flow monitoring and other data collection.
Is it fair to say, when you're looking at any Western Oregon wastewater facility, collection facility, treatment facility, that this I&I is the major problem?
Oh yeah, it's a big issue. I mean, you get upwards of 10 times the flow, your dry season flow during the wet season. And as Lance said, you have to treat it. You have to handle it.
Okay. Other questions, please?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think a lot of us think in like dollars and savings and things like that. How about, do you know about how much a city of our size might save by stopping all these I&I problems? Like over the time span of a master plan, maybe, and just an idea.
That's a really tough question.
I'm going to say, Peter, if you can come up with this answer, you're a brilliant individual.
It's a very good question. It's a
man.
really tough answer to give to you with any. I could really give you an answer, but it's not going to be based on any accurate data. So I don't know what to tell you. Other than I will say, you put in one wrong pipeline in the wrong location at the wrong size, you've paid for a master plan 2 or 3 times over. So the value, I'm a master planning geek, but the value of master planning is experienced or you see that value with any kind of mishap or not mishap, but putting a pipeline where it shouldn't be, or the wrong size or undersized, which is a bigger problem. You've realized the cost of a master plan many times over. So
great, thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lance, one more question. At what point does the state DEQ start to get after us about exceeding our permit and violating the 3-basin rule and so on and so forth? Now, last year, 2 years ago?
Well, whenever we don't meet our permit, we have to send in a report on a monthly basis, and if we don't meet our permit, we've got to send a nice little explanation why we don't. In 2018, we didn't meet it 3 months in a row. We were very close to getting a fine. But we showed that the initiative that we were going out, and we were trying to find why weren't we meeting it. We couldn't figure it out. And so that's one of the reasons we hired the consultant to come in and do a model of our plan, to try to figure out why we weren't meeting it. What I can say is, even though, and I think Peter could back me up on this, again, he's the master plan guy, and that's why we're hiring, or potentially may hire him. The only permit requirements are going to get more and more and more difficult as we move into the future, okay? But our requirements going out into the river, regardless of how much flow we got coming into our plant, if we have 20,000 people, and we have 20,000 people worth of flow coming, our requirements to go out into the river are not going to change. They're going to still stay the same. So that means we're going to have to come up with better and better processes to treat our effluent here or influent here at our plant.
Okay.
I guess that's what I can tell you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other questions or thoughts, or shall we go to council deliberation? I'm ready to.
I would, unless you guys want to really, I know you want to get going here, and I'll let you get going here. I want to just reestablish how we went through this. You can see that we have the content evaluation criteria. That was put in the RFP. We have down below there, Keller, we have both scores there. As you can see, Keller Associates' proposal was a little higher than Jacobs. Those were individual reviewers. We met, I gave them the review packets. They went out on their own, reviewed it independently, came back with me, and I tallied all the numbers. So there was no collaboration when we were actually scoring these. There was collaboration after I presented the final results to determine whether or not we wanted to move forward with Keller. We did. And so, the staff recommendation. City staff reviewed, scored the proposal submitted by Jacobs and Keller for the wastewater master plan update, inflow and infiltration mitigation study, and recommend the city award the contract to Keller Associates at this time. Your options: award the contract or reject all bids.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's go to council deliberations on this. Or we can go to a vote whatever you folks are comfortable with.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I wasn't going to say anything, Lance, but since you referred to it, it's really nitnoid, so don't hate me.
No, that's fine.
As I was looking at the scores, I was trying to look at apples to apples comparisons. So like the introductory letter of each, or the key personnel qualifications of each. So what I would like to see as a suggestion is a 7th column, which tallies the individual scores horizontally.
Oh,
That would be helpful.
I was trying to look at,
for the future?
in the future, yeah. I can kind of surmise looking at it, doing math in my head, but
IT guy, right?
yeah.
Just kidding.
Don't hate
Shut up,
me-
man.
Don't hate me today, but maybe tomorrow, huh? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Are there more questions? Or,
Nope, not questions. Are we going to deliberation?
I'm sorry.
I thought we were going to deliberation, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, under deliberations, is there anything else? Or can we go to this bid award?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to say that I think that Lance did a great presentation on this. I feel like it was really clear, and that someone that knows really nothing about wastewater. I feel like
it's
I know enough to make an informed decision, and I really appreciate that you took the time to answer our questions.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Wastewater's easy. It all runs downhill. Don't lick your fingers and wins lunch. It's easy. Nothing to it. Okay. What do you folks want to do with this?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we award the contract to Keller Associates for the contract amount of $350,000.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second to award a wastewater master plan update and inflow and infiltration mitigation study to Keller and Associates in the amount of $350,000. Alyssa, would you poll the council, please, on this?
Of course. Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, Lance. Great presentation, and thank you, sir, from Keller being here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next thing is ordinance number 1040, amending the marijuana business licensing requirements. It's an action item, and that's what it sounds like, marijuana. It's ordinance number 1040. Mr. Fleischman, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. members of the council. The issue before you this evening is the consideration of an ordinance that will amend the regulations for marijuana businesses. About 4.5 years ago, the council enacted a pair of ordinances that established and then quickly amended local licensing requirements for any marijuana business. They were enacted between the time that the voters of Oregon approved the initiative to legalize recreational marijuana and before the state's licensing program was up and running. The code requires that a local license be issued by the city for any type of business that handles marijuana. That includes producers, processors, wholesalers, retailers, and separately medical dispensaries. It requires that prior to the issuance of that license, the police department conducts a background check on all employees of the business, and it establishes certain locational restrictions and operational standards for all businesses. Those locational standards are more stringent than the state's standards. They do require that currently that any business involved with marijuana be located at least 1,000 feet from a school, which is the same as the state's regulations, at least 1,000 feet from any other marijuana business, and at least 200 feet from a residence, with some exceptions to that. The exceptions are residences that are restricted to occupancy by people 55 and older, and residences that are on the second floor of a mixed-use building in the downtown area. Those locational standards, when combined with the city's zoning for where businesses, particularly retail businesses, are permitted, mean that there could be no more than 4 marijuana businesses in the city. We currently, there have been 2 marijuana businesses licensed. One is in business today on North 3rd Avenue downtown. Another previously was located up in the Santiam Station area. It was in business for probably less than a year. And we expect to issue a 3rd license in the coming months, also in the Santiam Station area. All of those licenses have been for retail operations or medical dispensaries. The police department reports they've experienced no issues associated with the retail business on North 3rd Avenue. Part of the drive for the amendments that staff is bringing to you this evening in this ordinance is that last year in December, Congress passed what's known as the 2018 Farm Bill. And in that, they took hemp out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. And hemp is no longer considered a drug, and that is a term that's now defined in federal statute. And so one of the changes that is part of this ordinance is to define the word hemp and to exempt hemp from marijuana, so that a business that is handling hemp but not marijuana would not come under our marijuana licensing code. The other proposed amendments that staff is bringing to you would apply the 1,000-foot separation requirement only between retail facilities, and retail is both recreational and medical, but it is a business that is selling product to the consumer as opposed to a grower or a processor, which would be allowed only in our industrial zones anyway. And thirdly, the ordinance would amend the code to remove the 200-foot separation from residences. That is currently in the code for any marijuana business. And in doing so, would remove the restriction on the number of producers, processors, or wholesalers that could be allowed in the city, but would still essentially cap the number of retailers at no more than 4. Because that's all that would fit when you have the separations and you look at where commercial zones are. Also, the ordinance would insert into the nuisance code, separate from the marijuana chapter, but into the nuisance chapter of the code, a requirement that all businesses in the city control offensive odors. Partly, this ordinance is presented to you because we've had a building in the industrial zone that has recently been rented by some hemp growers and processors. After staff signed off on their land use compatibility statement, which is required by the State Department of Agriculture, we then realized, oh, the definition of marijuana in our code today includes hemp, because that's the way it was written back in 2014 or 15. And so that sort of was the impetus for staff putting together the changes that are before you. We'll answer any questions you have. The recommendation from staff is to enact Ordinance 1040 as presented.
Okay, questions and thoughts?
Mr. Mayor?
Folks, who's first? Go ahead, David, please.
Okay, thank you.
Paige?
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question, and this may be better handled by Ty. So the licensing section of this 5.12.030, section E, talking about criminal background checks. Those are still currently called for in the Oregon Revised Statute that legalizes marijuana and retail businesses, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you guys see a lot of value in those still being conducted? I mean, granted, they're state law anyways, but as far as if these were to be removed, I mean, we don't necessarily do this for liquor employees, I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know.
That was a part of the statute. It just prevents certain people from applying and having that license. Not that they can't be employed there in some capacity, but they are not the owners.
Okay. Thank you.
Paige? Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions. The first one, Dan, has to do with how are we going to measure what someone considers an offensive odor? And I ask this because we all have different views of what is offensive. I mean, you go into an office and you smell someone's perfume and that's offensive. If you're a vegan and you walk down the street, you smell pizza that has meat on it and that's offensive. So I'm just curious how we're gonna really enforce this.
Regulating odor is very difficult to do because we can't go out with a meter and say, oh, you're exceeding.
But you can. They have them.
Well, there are meters to determine the concentration of various compounds that produce the odor, but they're not really measuring the odor itself. And all you need to do is spend any time in my house and you'll know that somebody's nose is a lot more sensitive than another person's nose.
Right.
So we're not measuring the odor with those meters, we're measuring the various volatile compounds that may be in the air that create the odor. The current code for marijuana businesses has in it odor control, and that's not changing. In fact, we've copied that paragraph and suggested inserting it into the nuisance chapter of the code so that it applies to any business activity. And the criteria that is suggested in here is that the standard for judging it is that of an average reasonable person with ordinary sensibilities finds it objectionable. I worked in the last community I worked in, we had some issues with odor control, and we ended up, the solution we came up with was empowering a majority of the governing body. If a majority of the governing body went out and said, oh, that smells bad, then it was a violation of that community's local code, because it's not like sound or color or whatever. We can't measure it. It's difficult to do, but this is the standard that we've got in our code today for marijuana businesses, and we're suggesting in order for it to apply to businesses that are not marijuana businesses that have the potential to create offensive odors, that it's a potentially workable solution.
Okay.
Councilor Hook, I think probably the biggest teeth that we're going to have here is the requirement of the air filtration. We're going to at least mandate that they have something there so that it's just not free. It's not going to be 100%. We know that. We recognize that. And you're right, it's going to be subjective. But as long as there's a standard that we know that they are attempting to filtrate that, that gives us something to check.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. My second question, sorry. I just had one other question.
Okay.
About the 200-foot limit from a residence being removed. Can you explain again what, I guess I just didn't understand that. What is the purpose of the 200-foot limit being removed, and what are some of the implications from that? Dan?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. Can you?
200 feet from the residence, that part is being removed. Can you tell me like a little bit about why that's being removed and what the implications are for that in the community? Like, I don't know, if I lived right next door to one of those, which I don't, but.
I think that the 200-foot separation was put into the ordinance 4 or 5 years ago because of the concern with access to marijuana retail businesses by children. The same reason that I assume that the state says you have to be 1,000 feet away from a school. To date, we've experienced no issues with the businesses that have been in the community. And we've experienced no other issues as far as odor or traffic or whatever. We do have areas that are zoned for business but have residences located in them. There have been people who have been interested in opening a marijuana business but can't find a location because of the 200-foot rule, even though the property is available and zoned for retail. But because there are homes in that area, it doesn't meet our local locational standards. So staff has felt that there's no real public purpose served by requiring them to be 200 feet away from a residence.
So if I'm understanding right, if I have a daycare facility within my home, which I don't, but if I did have one within my home and someone within 200 feet from me wanted to start some type of marijuana business and they went through the whole steps, they could do that if we took this out. And they would be within 200 feet of my daycare facility.
They would be, the fact that you have a daycare facility is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, it's not a school.
Because it's not a school. But yes, under today's code, if your home was within 200 feet of a business zone, then someone could not have a marijuana business in that portion of the zone that's within 200 feet of your home, whether you have a daycare or not. The staff is recommending to you that we don't do that with any other business. We don't do that with the pharmacy that sells opiates. We don't do that with the liquor store. And
Thank you.
These retail businesses, we're learning, aren't substantially different than that.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Other questions and thoughts? You know, Dan, we could all that have lived here a while, even a couple of 3 years, can comment on this odor problem. When NORPAC was processing onions this time of year, that created misery for any number of our citizens, but at the same time they understood the need for it and that it was a temporary thing and that it was part of an established business. And so there were complaints, I'm sure, but it went away. I don't know if that answers anything. Maybe even probably doesn't at all, but hey, comments from the public.
My first job as a planner was for a small city that the main business downtown was a leather tannery.
Oh boy.
And it was not for 6 weeks in the fall. It was 365.
Oh. Wow. Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Dan, so am I understanding correctly, you're saying that the 200-foot rule from any residence is impeding possible business?
Yes, there have been marijuana businesses that have been interested in available commercial property in the city that is within 200 feet of residences, and those residences are in the business zone.
And so the third application that you're talking about, that one that's down by Arco, is that correct?
Yes.
Whether or not this goes through that business, that's not going to affect that business?
Correct. That business is more than 200 feet away from any residences.
Okay. Travis.
Dan, you said there's force.
We have to come to them.
Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Travis Woods, live at 456 East Regis Street. So you said there's 4 spots right now where people could have recreational pot or marijuana dispensaries. How many, if you change the rule, how many more would you be able to have? If you change it, do you have an idea, or do you have an idea how many you'd allow in town?
4.
I think.
Under the current rules, when you look at zoning and where businesses may be located.
You said there's a possibility of 4 spots, unless you take away the 200 foot.
And you look at the 1,000-foot separation from a school, and a 1,000-foot separation from any other marijuana business. The current code will allow a maximum of 4 marijuana businesses.
Right, and if you change the code.
If we change the code to, if the council enacts ordinance 1040 as presented by staff, then in theory, there could be an unlimited number of growers, processors, and wholesalers, provided they're in a zone that allows agriculture, manufacturing, and wholesale. And there could be no more than 4 retail operations.
Okay, so that's even with the changes.
There's only 4 areas that are zoned for retail that are 1,000 feet away from a school and 1,000 feet away from the existing, from each other.
Changing the 200-foot rule, though,
would not change the number of retail operations permitted in the city.
That's what I
Okay, good. Good question. Thank you. Others?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So, Dan, I would assume, to your comment earlier, we do have producers, processors in town currently.
There are, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Under the current rule, yes, there is, because there is a hemp processing operation going on in the industrial area today.
And
if you amend the code, then they are no longer a regulated activity.
Roger. Okay. And do we know if this existing facility has an air filtration system?
I don't think so.
Okay. So do they, if this is enacted, once it goes into place, do they get a grace period to get the air filtration system?
Yes.
Do they need one?
And they may not need, by then they may not need one.
Okay.
My understanding is they're a fairly temporary situation.
Okay.
It was a grower who got hit by the early September rain and needed to get his crop under cover.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Other questions or thoughts? And if there aren't any, we can go to council deliberation. And if they're done deliberating, we can go to some action here. What would you like to do?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I make a motion to move to approve ordinance 1040 as presented.
Okay.
I second.
Is there a second?
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. I've got a motion to approve the first consideration of ordinance 1040, or to move ordinance 1040, approve it as presented. Are there any other questions or comments? Let's go to some action then. Alyssa, would you poll the council on this one, please?
Sure. Councilor Mullen?
Yes.
Councilor Patty?
Yes.
Councilor Hook?
Yes.
Councilor Ort?
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes 4-0.
So that's a unanimous vote, and that will be given to somebody local for their signature. Okay, and we're moving right along here tonight. Next thing is an unaudited budget to actual 2018-2019 fiscal year. Susanna.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
While we're waiting for the projector to come on, this evening I'm going to present to you the unaudited actuals for the year 18-19. Unaudited actuals means that the audit has not been completed on this year's books yet. When the audit is completed, I will be presenting that hopefully in December or first part of January when the audit's complete. So tonight, this evening, is an update for you to see how, a snapshot of how the year ended and how things landed. Why is it not there? Hold on just a second. Did it work? We lost it? There it is.
Presentation of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
there it is. So in your board packet, I presented you a one-page look at the 17-18 year, the 18-19 year, and the budget to actuals against the budget for the 18-19 year. So I'm going to kind of work through this report a little bit and give you some highlights based on this report in your hand. Taking a look at the revenues as a whole, not separating it out by fund, but just looking at the city's complete revenues, we received $11.3 million in revenues that came in. With the beginning fund balance and the revenues coming in, it put our budget ending at a little over $22 million. The revenues received is a combination of taxes, franchise fees, charge for service, permits, intergovernmental funds, and interest. Taking a look at what that has compared to budget to actuals, you can see that overall that our year-to-date actuals came in a little bit under the budget. Basically, the two key factors that resulted in a difference in the budget is your charge for service. The reason the charge for services came in lower than budgeted by almost $400,000 was based on a project that was not completed for the storm, for the sewer. Project that did not completed for the lines from Ina Street to the plant. That would have resulted in the city of Sublimity's contract being larger, and that's the difference in the fee there for why that's came in so much lower. The other reason for the difference in the intergovernmental being a $300,000 lower is the CBDG grant. Did I say that right? It was put in for $400,000, so we put in the budget for $400,000, but only $77,000 was received, which is usually how grants work. But you receive what they give you, and the rest of it will come in this fiscal year. But that's the main differences for the revenue from the budget to actuals. Come on. Taking a look at the budget to taking a look at the revenue, just to kind of give you a big picture of it. You can see that the $11 million that came in, that the majority of that, 51%, is our charge for services. Those are our utility contracts mostly. Then there's also some fees at the pool and the library as well, but the majority of that is there. And you can see our taxes at 24% of that $11 million. Those taxes consist of our property taxes, our local levy taxes, and our local gas taxes. The intergovernmental that holds at 12%, that is where you're looking at the state gas tax that comes to us, the grant funds that we receive, those things, and the cigarette and liquor tax that comes in that 12%. So that kind of gives you a kind of a breakdown of what the revenue coming into the city looks like. Okay, so when we look specifically at the interfund money, that was the 1.4 million that we received. If we took that and I broke it down, you can see the majority of that 1.4 million is the gas tax that comes from the state. That holds 40% of that 1.4 million, and the liquor and cigarettes hold a 10%. The two new grants that we received this year was the CBDG grant, which you see it was a 5%, and the construction grant, which is was used to do the stormwater detention facility, that took 27%. The majority of the other funds are right around the 6%. So that's how that 1.4 million breaks down for the intergovernmental funds. Yes, Mr. Mayor?
I can do ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation. What is CDBG, please?
Dan, what is community?
That is the Community Development Block Grant. That is our current housing rehabilitation grant.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
So taking a look at the $2.6 million that we receive for taxes, the majority of that $2.6 million is the 74% of it is our property taxes, and 16% is our local option levy taxes that come in, and our local gas tax at 8%, and then the remaining is the prior year taxes and some miscellaneous taxes for that $68 million at the bottom, or $68,000 at the bottom.
Susanna?
Yes,
you know,
Mr. Mayor.
There have been these less than kindly thoughts floating in the community over the last 6 or 8 months about we don't support our police services. And I wonder how many in the community know that $1,981,500 won't even pay the police budget.
In your report, that's in your packet, the year-to-date expenditures for the 18-19 year for the police department was $2.2 million.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we have to put more money in. Good. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking a look at the charge for services, looking at the utility expenses, our water, our sewer, the city of Sublimity contract, and our street and our storm. What I did is I took those total, that's your 5.7 million, and broke it out according to these services, knowing that the pool and the library are a very small portion. But how the it overall broke out is 69% of your residents pay these fees. The other 11% is your commercial businesses paying these fees, 10% is in your industrial fees, and then the public entities are your schools, churches, and the city of Sublimity is in that 10%. So that kind of lets you see that 5.7 million that came in, how it's dispersed by the community paying the fees. Does that make sense? Okay. Taking a look at the expenses as a whole for the entire city, overall, our actuals to budget, we came in around 700,000 under budget, in the salary category as well as the material and services category. And you can see from the bar below how it visually kind of looks, it's just under budget for both expenditures, just for the city. And then as on the next half of your report, I broke it down by fund and gave you big numbers for expenditures and budget to actual. So I'm going to talk through some of the key aspects of that. In your general fund section, as we just mentioned a minute ago, your police department is planning, community center, the mayor and council, street lights, admin. Those are all those subcategories that are all within the general fund. Just to highlight a couple places, the administration part of the general fund only spent 81% of their budget, and that's basically because 2 positions were unfilled. I did not get here to the last 2 weeks of this fiscal year, and the accounting technician was just hired this month for the second position to be filled. As I stated in the report, the police department was at 2.2 million in expenditures, and planning only spent 265,000. The other thing that was on here is the mayor and council budget spent 109% of their budget. In your memo I stated that it was based on council training. That's because my reading the definition of the GL that was involved says conferences for council. I assumed that was training. When I looked deeper after I sent you this report, I realized that it also included the SSW consulting that was hired for helping you with your goals. And then that was an $8,000 expense. So that contributed to being just a little bit overfunded, over expenditures to budget, because that was a decision that was made after the budget was approved, that was needed to be done. A budget is a live document, and it moves and it changes just as quick as the ink dries on the paper. So this is a perfect example of a need that was found after the budget was approved. The whole general fund, it was underspent. It was only 89%. So this one small subline is fine because it's still under the grand total, but because I lined them out individually, I wanted to make sure you knew what was in that expense line. A couple other key places. The budget to actuals for the parks funds shows it only spent 59% of its budget compared to the actuals, and that it contributed to the Jordan Bridge project was not completed, so less expenditures. The sewer project came in at 73% of its expenditures compared to budget, and this was due to the main line from the Ida to the wastewater treatment not being completed, and the flume replacement was not completed, which again contributed to the budget being higher for the City of Sublimity's contract. And since the project wasn't done, and then no additional fees were given to them. Taking a look at the stormwater, we can see that they were at 71%, and according, the manhole project was not completed, and that's for the difference for that fund. The other funds that were all in the higher range in the 80s, I just left those. I just wanted to get a couple of the key ones. If you have questions on the other ones, I can find out for you. Now comparing last year, the 17-18 year to the 18-19 year, we see that we ended 17 with 10.7 million and 18 with 11.3 million, gives us about $680,000 increase in revenue from the prior year. Not too bad of a number.
Okay.
The biggest contributor to that, a little bit increase in property taxes by 100,000. Fees for services were down just a little bit by 7,000, but the real contributor to the biggest portion of that was our gas tax. We received 70,000 more than the prior year, and the two new grants, the CBDG grant and the construction grant. Those are the main contributors to the 680,000 increase from the prior year in revenue. And overall, if we look at expenditures from salaries and materials and services, it's an overall 9% increase from the 17-18 year to this year, with change in salaries and rates and inflation. That's not too big of a number for seeing it, and change in expenditures. And what that visually looks like there, you can see that the salaries for the 18-19 year in the blue, and then the prior year in the green. So you can just kind of see a visual of what that kind of looks like. And 9% is a very small increase. And just taking a quick glance at the 3-year beginning fund balances, you can see that the city's been pretty good at staying close to a $10 million beginning fund balance, which helps ensure funding for the city with the wave, since the majority of our revenues are based on property tax and charge for services. Having that beginning fund balance is very important as we go through the year for unexpected things to keep the city in a stable place.
Susanna, there used to be lots of questions about that. Why would you need that money in July, August, September? And you had to try to explain to people that property taxes don't come in until November and through the rest of the next calendar year. And it seemed like a difficult concept for some folks. They just, why don't you wait till November, then you get money and you spend it. Well, yeah, but you get to spend money in July and August and September and October.
We get a small amount. This is true, the biggest of the majority of the current property taxes come in those key times. But also, when we're looking at beginning fund balances, we're also looking at the overall city as a whole. Because when the economy is a ever-moving, fluent situation, and basically every 10 years the economy takes a hit. And we just came out of a bad recession through 9, 10, 11. It took us a while to climb out of that. When we're in those fluxes of up and down, the beginning fund balances and the ending fund balances helps us keep our secure, stable movement of the city's needs to ensure that those are met, so that we're prepared for these times. And unexpected things that may come up to be repaired that we didn't plan for, this money is what that is for. Overall, your city is a very conservative city. You does very well from what I've seen in the short time I've been here by keeping your expenditures low and keeping a close eye on your revenues. But that is the things that predict that. And when we project out and look at multi-year projections, we pay attention to that, knowing what's happening. And as we watch this, the economic indicators, this is what will assure that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
If that helps.
Thank you, thank you.
And I will go into that more and more as we go through the years together, talking about this again and again, because beginning and ending fund balance is a serious part of budget planning and multi-year projections. So this is the first report for giving you a financial update. I did very big picture tonight just to give you a visual. I feel it's important that you kind of understand the city as a big picture so you can get a feel for what type of revenues are coming and where they're going, and give you that kind of picture as we go forward. My goal at this point is to give you quarterly updates on what's happening within the fiscal year itself, and as well as these unaudited actuals, your audit report, and of course approving of the budget. So this document, I'm sure, will change over time, but I'd like to hear from you either tonight or later what you like, don't like about this report, things that you would like to add, because it's important that these reports make sense to you and that they're understandable as you're on the budget committee and making decisions for the city, and you can see these things as a big picture and understanding what projects are moving or not moving financially. So that's
well, thank you, Susanna. Could you, in these projections, at each quarter, put in a series of 4 or 5 intelligent questions that could be asked so that we act like we are following what's going on?
I can do that. I'll find something good.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback that I really appreciated the charts, the graphs, and the time that you spent explaining what went into each one of those things. I think it was fantastic. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank
Yes, go ahead.
A little bird on the street mentioned that Susanna was a little nervous doing this tonight.
Just a
and
little.
You knocked it out of the park.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Good job.
Yes,
But
job.
to kind of back on what Councilor Hook was saying, perfect level of detail, right level of visibility. I like pictures. I like big picture thinking. But the notes, the ability to take notes on the side, I like that. So,
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
Other comments? This is an information item, so
Yes.
there's no action on it tonight, but anything else?
I'm just so glad that you're here. It's like refreshing to be able to have someone that can explain this stuff really well.
Right.
So thank you.
And as I learn more, I'll be able to explain more. I only know this much so far.
All right, thank you again. Let's see, let's go along. We're looking at a couple hours here, so we'll get this done. Communications from mayor and councilors. Let me start
Yeah.
real quick.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I say something to Susanna real quick?
Oh, no, go ahead,
So
but jump in
aside
on
from what
these
I
things.
kind of already, jumped on with you on that, just the explanations when we're over budget, I very much appreciate those and the breakdown, and if that can continue, that would be great. So that was helpful for us to kind of go back and forth and understand why we were over budget as a council in that particular expenditure. So thank you.
Yes, I can add those in going forward. I'm still learning what all is where.
Any other comments from Susanna, or shall we go ahead? Let's go ahead.
I echo everything that
there's
everyone
one.
said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. I got this letter from a Paul Hook in Mill City, and he was reading in the Canyon newsletter about, he says, I read about your issue with NORPAC leaving your city with an excess of unused water. As a suggestion, wouldn't it be possible to create a process to filter, bottle, and sell the water on the open market instead of burdening taxpayers? Generate funding for other programs, or contract the water to a third party who can filter, bottle, and sell the water. Interesting thought. After reading the story in the Canyon Weekly, I thought I'd write to you with this suggestion. This is Paul Hook in Mill City. 40 years ago, we thought we wanted to do something like this. And the only hang-up, and we even knew where there was a bottling plant for sale, it just never got any real traction. Certain amount of enthusiasm on forward-looking young counselors, some present 40 years ago, but it just never got a lot of traction. But it's certainly an idea, and the staff is dealing with this budget-wise and what to do with this, and or not do with it. And so it's an active, let's call it a situation in our city. But with NORPAC shutting down 31st, I guess, is their last day, and we don't know what's going to happen to that plant. It's all kind of up in the air, and so is what to do with that water. So, thank you for that. Councilors, anything else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, somebody. Oh, Paige.
I feel like somewhere I heard that, Chief, when are you gone? What, are you leaving us? What is going on here? You just got here. What's going on here? I know we're hiring somebody, but what is this?
Yes, I'm the interim.
I know. When's
Unfortunately, Sherwood wants me back, so.
and when is that?
In the very near future. I don't have a definitive date.
Okay. Another council meeting, or
I don't know, when is the next council meeting?
like in 2-3 weeks?
The first Monday in November 4th.
Oh, yeah, I'll probably be here.
Okay, all right. I just want
Now
to.
that I know the date, yes.
Okay, good.
Other questions?
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Things from the council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank Steve for the update on the facade grants and how that's been going. It's kind of fun to see updates on Facebook, but thank you for coming and telling us what's happening. And you didn't mention the ghost tour and chocolate walk. And so I wanted to mention that. I'm going to be a ghost on the ghost tour, taking groups around. This is my second year doing that, and it's actually really fun to learn about the history of Staton and kind of some key players, and then pass that knowledge along to other people. So if you haven't gotten tickets and you're interested in that, they can go to the Brown House page.
Either the Brown House or Revitalize Downtown Staton.
Okay, Brown House or Revitalize Downtown Staton pages, and get more information about that.
There are 14 tickets left, so get them soon.
14 tickets left, been told. So if you want to come hang out with me, and I feel like there's another ghost.
Okay.
It might be a Patty. You're gonna have to come down, get a ticket, and
Yeah, what part is she playing again? I can't remember.
she's a ghost. It's a surprise. You'll have to see. And then I mentioned this. You reminded me a couple weeks back about coffee with the counselor. So we're trying to keep that up, and we saved the date for November 2nd. Haven't quite hashed that one out yet, but save that date for coffee or just chat with the counselor, and we'll make that happen. So, thank you.
Question for Steve. How much they said in the announcement for the chocolate walk that there's some not really set up for people with mobility problems. Is that true?
I can answer that if that's okay. So the Brown House has
Stairs?
quite a few stairs,
Oh,
and they
okay.
take you on a tour of the downstairs and upstairs
Oh,
of
okay.
the Brown House. But also there's quite a bit of walking. You go from the Brown House to downtown.
Okay, all right. And 13 tickets left? 16?
14.
14, okay. Thank you.
13 if you get one.
Thank you both. Other communications from counselors, anything? How about city staff?
Nothing.
Nothing? Thank you for the library report. Susanna, thank you for the financial report.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor.
And Lance, Great job tonight.
Thank you, sir.
And Dan, get
Adequate.
Get the sniff, get the city sniffers going. All right, is there anything else tonight? Future agenda items, sidewalk program, Jordan Bridge update. We're going to do something with that. Grant writing, Mill Creek Park update, and facility needs assessment update. And if there's nothing else this evening, let's go home. And a thank you again to our city attorney driving up from Eugene tonight. and
Yes,
helping
thank
us.
you.
Thank you, folks.